Hello and welcome to the Tennis Podcast, coming to you from Flushing Meadows, New York, on day 11 of the US Open. There are just 4 days to go of this thing, and our semi-final lineups are now set. Let's start with the women's event and the incredible last 4 lineup that we'll be seeing here tomorrow night for women's semi-finals under the lights on Ash. It'll be Jessica Pegula against Aryna Sabalenka. We knew that already. That match was set up yesterday. And it will be Naomi Osaka against Amanda Anisimova, or David versus Matt.
We did have a little bit of a chat about the potential for this on the way in on the subway, didn't we, Matt? And here we are.
And we decided it would be extremely fun if it happened.
Yeah.
A collision of podcast bits.
Have we ever had two bits on the go at the same time in opposition? Like Nicholas Jarry has never played Amanda Anisimova.
I don't think of such stakes. We've probably had a Jarry feast at some point or another, but I don't even know if that has happened.
Matt has secretly supported Artifice in said matches. Maybe not even secretly.
But no, we've never had anything quite like this.
No. And to be fair, Nicholas Jarry is more of a bit, and Amanda Anisimova is more of just a thing.
Yeah, more of your entire personality.
Yeah.
I wonder how she'd take that. You're just a bit of a thing.
Shall we start then with Amanda Anisimova, the incredible Amanda Anisimova, avenging her Wimbledon final defeat, her double bagel in the Wimbledon final, to come back today in her next meeting with Iga Swiatek and beat her 6-4, 6-3. Matt Roberts, talk us through it.
I'm pretty awestruck by what Amanda Anisimova did today, and I think everyone is, actually. You know, like 53 days had passed, only 53 days since that double bagel, that chastening, harrowing experience in that Wimbledon final. And here she is at the next slam against the same opponent, and she gets broken in the first game to go 1-love down. And I was clenched. I was so just like nervous for her, and I think everyone in the stadium was as well.
Yeah, you could feel it.
Yeah, you could feel it. You could feel it because she'd had a game point and she hadn't taken it, and you do. You have the thoughts of, oh my goodness, is this going to happen again? Are we about to experience the same thing or something very similar? But then a very, very crucial thing happened, and she won the next game. On return, the first Iga Swiatek service game, and she broke, and then she held to love. And honestly, in that moment, I just thought, phew. Like, this is now a tennis match. This is no longer a kind of cruel psychological experiment. Like, we are in this now. Like, Amanda Anisimova is here, and that's what she said at the start of the tournament. I want to play her when I'm myself, with my best tennis. And I just thought, okay, finally we're going to be able to see that. And then from then on, it was just, well, an absolutely extraordinary performance from Amanda Anisimova, hitting the ball like we know she can, taking on the Swiatek serve. Swiatek did not have a good serving day. She's not had a particularly good serving tournament, to be honest, and that continued today, and Anisimova really took advantage of it, and she just became the best version of herself. Anisimova taking over in rallies with her flat hits, doing all the things that I always thought would give her a chance in the matchup against Iga Swiatek that she just wasn't able to display in that Wimbledon final because of nerves and exhaustion and everything. And she was moving really, really well. There was a lot of points today where you really noticed the difference in Anisimova's movement this year. The forehand was fantastic.
And the movement wide to the forehand.
Totally.
Those two things together was so strikingly improved today.
Absolutely.
Even from Wimbledon.
And she kept it together in the biggest moment. She played great tennis, and you know, that is now back-to-back slams where she's beaten Sabalenka and Swiatek. She is proving that her level is up there with the very, very best in the world. And we've talked all year, or I have anyway, but we have as a podcast about her improved resilience in matches, and I just think we're seeing that in a much bigger sense here. Her resilience to come back from that Wimbledon final defeat, and her bravery to play the way she did today against the same opponent was absolutely remarkable. I think take away the fact that it's Amanda Anisimova and everything that we've got connected to her on this podcast, whoever that player is doing that today, coming back from that experience to give this performance, I think we would all just be in absolute awe and absolute wonder. And it's great for me that it's Anisimova. And I think it's a very, very special thing that we saw her do today.
Yeah, I'm a bit obsessed with it. Actually, I don't want to muscle in on your turf, Matt, but as you say, regardless of who this was, I'm obsessed with somebody coming back from what she experienced at Wimbledon in 53 days and doing what she did today. And we'll get into what she told us in the press conference about that journey during those 53 days. But sort of words like inspiring and aspirational are kicked around far too much, but I found what she did today so inspiring. And yes, she's got this in-match resilience that we've never seen before, but she's clearly such a resilient human being, and that's what she's taking to the tennis matches now. And look, I sat next to Matt for the entirety of Anisimova's victory over Sabalenka at Wimbledon in the semi-finals. I sat next to Matt for the entirety of this match today, apart from an extremely poorly timed loo break, which I simply couldn't put off any longer. My bladder underestimated Amanda Anisimova, and I did just catch the match point. But it was suboptimal timing, put it that way. But anyway, I experienced these matches with Matt, and I found the experience so different. Wimbledon was exhilarating and dramatic, but it was anxiety laden throughout. I had this constant feeling of being on a fairground ride and hanging on. Can she keep this up? Can she keep this up? Oh my God, she's keeping this up. Is it going to be enough? Apart from sort of early stages of the opening set today, and maybe a tiny wobble at the start of the second when she dropped serve, but at that point Matt had said to me, Anisimova, I don't want to say this too loud, but Anisimova has an incredible record from a set up. So I already had this sort of deep-seated sense of confidence that Matt had instilled in me.
35 wins in a row, now 36 from a set up.
See, he's got the receipts. Can't argue with the stats. Apart from those early moments, I just had this sense of calm and confidence in her that, okay, Swiatek wasn't bang on it today by any means, and she's released a statement explaining that she's been managing some things and some pain in her foot, and for sure her serve was she served at 50% today, and Amanda Anisimova did what I quite often think that players should do more to Iga Swiatek's second serve. She stepped in on it and she punished it, and she was doing that brilliantly. But I just had this sense of calm watching her of she's just got the level. She's just such a good tennis player. She's so locked in. I don't doubt that she's going to keep this up, that she's going to keep her focus, that she's going to be able to maintain this. And this is enough. Her level is enough to beat Iga Swiatek's and Aryna Sabalenka's. Not necessarily every time. It isn't for anyone. But she is right up there as one of the best players in the world, as far as I'm concerned. And I think she is a serious contender for this title, which I know isn't a bold prediction for someone that's in the last four. She's minimum 25% contender for this title, but I think she's more than that. I am such an Amanda Anisimova believer after today.
Well, it was a bit of a difference maker today, wasn't it? I do remember on the eve of the tournament and in the weeks leading up to it, I certainly remember and I believe all of us said that we felt she was in the mix for this tournament and for Grand Slam tournaments to come because of her skill set. Her skill set is absolutely extraordinary. I can't really think of other players other than the very top couple. I think Rybakina has got a bit of it, Sabalenka has it, Swiatek has it, and Anisimova has it, of being able to hurt you from both sides equally. And actually,
I can't believe you didn't just take the opportunity to mention Osaka. But
well, yeah, actually that is true. That's fair. But it's a very select group, and actually backhand wise, it's no exaggeration to say Anisimova has the best one of them all, even the ones that are at the very top there. And I mean, when she unleashed it today, and it wasn't just good to look at, and it wasn't just effective against a normal player, it was effective against the best mover in the world. The person who has a great backhand of her own and was going toe to toe with it, and then suddenly this winner is hit at extraordinary power and landing in the junction between baseline and service line and sideline. But that was all still skill set wise. It was what happens when she gets in a big situation against a player having had what she had happen a few weeks back. And I mean, look, the moment she broke back, I thought she's right in there with a chance. But I mean, what really fascinated me is how she just didn't really buckle. There are a couple of shots that Swiatek hits that are really problematic for Anisimova, and it's the main one is that forehand that she hits short cross court that bounds out into the sidelines, and Anisimova will never be the quickest of movers, but she has got herself into sufficiently good fitness and good sort of fast twitch or whatever it is that she's at least able to manage it. And she made a lot of balls today. She didn't win all the points she was retrieving, but she still made a lot of points competitive. And yeah, it's a feel-good story what she's achieved here. And I mean, obviously, Swiatek fans will be sad that she's gone out, but look, she's already had a great summer. This is huge for Anisimova and huge for the game because there's another great contender right in there.
And the more I think about what what Anisimova had to say, both on the court and in the press conference after the match, and I know this is really easy to say after she's won this match, but the more I think about it, the more I think, win or lose, it was incredibly important and fortuitous that this rematch came as soon as it did.
Agreed,
the longer it went on, the more it could have lingered. I'm not saying I wouldn't have backed her to overcome it eventually, but I do think it's helped her that it's come this soon. This draw has helped her for sure, and it's forced her to engage in exposure therapy. The way she explained to us in her press conference how she's dealt with that Wimbledon final experience over the last 53 days, the sort of various different phases of that process, was incredible. She was on the phone to a friend kind of laughing about it half an hour later, kind of laughing at the absurdity of it all. And I do think, I get the impression Amanda Anisimova is a tennis player with real true friends, and I sometimes worry about that for tennis players. I think a lot of them don't have that because it's extremely hard to build and maintain friendships with this kind of life, and she does strike me as somebody that has that, and I think that's, and values that and nurtures that, and I think that's incredibly powerful.
And I think that's a mix of friends from within tennis but also outside tennis as well.
Exactly. She said 30 minutes after that experience I was on the phone and we were laughing at the absurdity of it all, and I think a lot of people will be able to relate to how healing that can be when a crazy, awful thing has happened to you. And then for a long time she just didn't think about it at all. She compartmentalised it, she put it away, she put it in a box, don't want to think about it. Totally fair enough. And then she told us that last night she watched the Wimbledon final. I cannot stop thinking about the fact that she did that. She was like, I feel like I better face it.
Yeah.
I better face down my demons.
I better find out what I did wrong.
Absolutely. And like thinking about everything we've talked about this tournament, about accountability, and you can only have proper growth with real accountability and facing up to yourself. Like, my God, what a model for that she is.
That's the story of the tournament, that she did that, and she told us about it. And she told us about it after having conquered her demons, if you like. Because how could you not be affected by a result like that on a setting like that? I'm so impressed.
And Catherine, it was your question that elicited that response, and then you followed up by saying, well, what did you see? What did you do wrong? And she was able to laugh at it, wasn't she? She said, I was as slow as hell.
She said my reactions were just so slow.
and that followed a line that she'd already given in the press conference about one of the things she consciously made an effort to do today while on court, kind of going back to our discussion about Alcaraz and his body language. She said, I just tried to move around a lot. She said, which is not something I usually do. And, for us experienced Amanda Anisimova watchers, like, there was a very notable difference
Definitely.
there. And, she talked about wanting to play fearless, brave tennis. And she said in her on-court interview, didn't she, that today proved everything for me. I can do it. And I think that absolutely speaks to what you said about why she needed this match soon, because otherwise
she'd have been wondering if she could do it.
Right, there'd have been this constant doubt in her mind, no matter what she achieved over the next months and maybe even years if she didn't play Iga Swiatek again. There'd just always be that thing there in her mind that might hold her back. It feels like now there's nothing holding her back. Like, yes, players might be better than her on the day. Naomi Osaka is a full-time major champion. She may well beat her tomorrow, or potentially Arina Sabalenka in the final. These are great players. She can lose to them, but she's not going to lose to them because of something holding her back. She's going to be able to give her all and give her best tennis. And from where she's come from, she talked about how a few years ago every single day was a shitty day, and now, like she said, every day I'm happy. And like that journey that she's been on, she has done so much work in her life. I think we talk about it, we see it on the court in terms of like the physical work that she's done and the technical improvements and all of that, but the mental and emotional work that she's done is truly inspiring. And
I'm in awe of her.
These people from Freehold, New Jersey
that don't know one another exists.
Right.
Well, hang on, does Bruce know about Amanda? Maybe he does now. Hang on a second. If Amanda reaches the final, does Bruce come? He's got a film to promote. Jeremy Allen White's been here every day.
I would love to say yes, but I doubt it.
This is a come and get me plea to Bruce Springsteen.
Please be here.
It's quite a few years since she said she didn't know who he was. I mean, she might be well into his music by now, for all we know.
Maybe.
I feel like if growing up in Freehold, New Jersey didn't get her into Bruce music, then the ship might have sailed. But yes, we'll give her the benefit of the doubt until she proves us otherwise. I already had one follow-up to the question I asked her, which was to ask, what did you get from watching the final back last night? And she explained, she said, I was slow, I need to not be as slow today. But she also said that after she'd watched the final back, she said then I had to watch some good highlights of myself to remove that final from my brain. And Matt had his hand up for an excellent follow-up that unfortunately he wasn't called upon, which is a real miss.
Yes, I wanted to know what were the good highlights that she watched.
And recommend her some.
I had plenty of recommendations.
Yeah, come look at my creepy YouTube playlist.
Well, we start with 2019 Australian Open.
Oh, it's such... Look, I really feel for Iga Swiatek, but you cannot deny the Amanda Anisimova story. That is, I know we have a special interest here. I want Matt to go blonde on Saturday. I want Bruce Springsteen to come. But this story of her coming back from something that could have ruined her 53 days ago, or it certainly could have compromised her for the rest of her career or defined her. Her coming back and doing this today is absolutely unreal. I think she's a marvel.
And that is, say that lightly.
That is a word I usually reserve only for Bertik van der Zandschulp. So there you go, Amanda. 2 wins today. The Iga Swiatek of it all. She wasn't at her best today. She has released a statement on Instagram, so telling us about that, this foot injury. Her press conference was a reminder, David, that she, as you always talk about so well, I think, is that she, even when she's winning, she's always treading a line, isn't she? Sometimes she's on the right side of that line, and sometimes she's just on the wrong side of that line, but she is always somewhere near it.
Yeah, I thought game-wise, I don't think she didn't look that far away to me of being in good form. I think her opponent really did cause us some problems. And at the same time, those margins are so slim, aren't they? The difference between you being absolutely at the very best of your powers and not being quite there at this level, you don't win Grand Slams unless you're at your absolute best. I don't think. But still, it's been a heck of a summer for her. It's just been a really, really busy one. And I mean, I ended up asking her about that workload. I mean, that was something I asked in my question, which my thinking was that all the other title holder at Wimbledon, Jannik Sinner, and his opponent Carlos Alcaraz and Aryna Sabalenka as well, though she didn't go as far. They all missed Canada, and even Naomi Osaka, who reached the final of Canada, and Victoria Mboka, who won Canada, then didn't play Cincinnati. And Iga played them all, having won Wimbledon. And I just thought, how tired must you be? That was what I was thinking. I was thinking, you must need a holiday right now after all this. And I
big Ibiza agenda.
Yes, and I did sort of, and I didn't want to put her on the spot of thinking, if I say yes to that, I'm going to blame it on, I look like I'm blaming the loss on that. But I just genuinely was curious, how tired do you feel right now? It's like when we reach the end of these tournaments, it's been great, we've done well, but oh my God, I need to just go and switch off. And I need to not look at another microphone for another however many days and have a rest. So I asked her, how tired do you feel right now? And she sort of pondered on it for quite a few seconds without saying anything. I think thinking about, she said, I haven't played many long matches.
She interpreted it in an entirely physical way, didn't she?
Yes. So
I think.
Hearing that, I sort of tried to change direction and point out, my intention was to say, don't you just need like a holiday and just to switch off from tennis for a while, like those other players do. I didn't phrase it like that. I said, do you maybe need a mental break? I mean, so do you need a sort of break from it all? Is what I was trying to get at, and I don't think she took it in quite that way that I intended, and which I understand. I think maybe that wording wasn't ideal, and she bristled at it, and it was a little awkward, to be honest. And you may well have read about that and heard about it, but that's what happened, and that's certainly what my intention was when I asked the question: is do you need to go on holiday now? And I perhaps should have said that, but there we are.
And she perhaps shouldn't have been so rude to you in response, because she was rude. She was rude. It was extremely uncomfortable.
Listen,
and it was unnecessary. I know you can handle it,
but also I do get it as well from her perspective. that phrasing perhaps not being ideal, and also you have just lost a very important match that means a lot to you, and also you have just played all this stuff and you probably do need a bloody holiday, in all honesty. So there we are.
Ibiza for all. Let's all go to Ibiza with Carlos Alcaraz.
It seems like that's the choice.
David, would you like to talk about Naomi Osaka?
I wouldn't mind.
Off you go.
Well, I mean, it's not the same story, but there are real parallels with Amanda Anisimova, aren't there? I mean, it's right down to the fact that Naomi Osaka has had a lot of challenges trying to deal with this life that you lead as a tennis player. It's not easy. It's not easy, and she's had a lot of ups and downs since winning those Grand Slam titles. She's talked very openly about the depression she's suffered, and I just remember coming here 2 years ago when she just had her baby, and she gave a mental health discussion with Michael Phelps in the press conference room that we've been in today, and she was talking about wanting to make a comeback, and I remember just thinking, God, it's so nice to see you. It's just, I don't know her. I've just watched her for years and like her, and love watching her play, and it's been a struggle really coming back, hasn't it? It hasn't really happened until quite recently, and tonight, that match she played against Karolina Muchova, who I was very sorry for because she was clearly physically hindered and impeded today. She's not 100% fit, and yet she played so beautifully, so convincingly, with such conviction did Muchova, that you actually had, and it's quite interesting, you know where we sit, we've got great seats in the press seats, sort of, I don't know, 15 rows back or whatever it is, but what you can't see the expressions on faces in quite the same way. So I couldn't see maybe the winces that Muchova was giving that you can see on TV. I could see her juddering to the stop and sort of running through shots rather than stopping on a dime and then switching direction. But in terms of the actual quality of tennis that I was watching from both players, they were both doing what they do to the absolute ultimate. You'd got Osaka getting behind every ball, hitting it with full velocity, both sides, into the corners. You'd got Muchova just stroking the ball back at her, timing it out of the middle of the racket, sometimes knocking Osaka back on her heels just with timing, then hitting short balls, then hitting slices, then coming in and hitting drop volleys. I mean, she hit one drop volley off her ankles, off a full-blooded forehand from Osaka that made me make a sound that I'm really not supposed to make in the press seats. I was in ecstasy watching this match because these are two of my absolute favourite players to watch, and it's just a shame that Muchova wasn't fully fit. But yeah, those first 8 games will really stay with me. But what will stay with me from the specific performance of Osaka is every time she went down, she came back. She went to break down twice in the second set, and the number of times she served away out of trouble with an ace or hit a winner, you know, her attitude, she would sort of kind of like absorb the disappointment for a few seconds of a lost point and then just nod and then say, right, you know, on we go. And I thought, this is great. And she really was a worthy winner.
All stemming from a round table meeting after Washington, she told us.
Yes, with her team. And I was trying to figure out, and this was after the Raducanu loss, and before she hired Thomas Witkowski, but I was trying to work out, well, was Patrick Mouratoglou in this meeting? Or was he gone by then? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, we don't. The announcement was afterwards, but that doesn't mean that the decision was afterwards. I would love to know dearly. Matt, your take on this match. I mean, mine aside from all of David's Naomi Osaka takes that I agree with, I'd just like to give a shout out to Karolina Muchova, who basically on one leg played pretty dreamy tennis. Like, her level of talent to be able to play like that and trust her hands to do what her legs couldn't was incredible. To make that as competitive as she did, 4 and 6, you know, and she had chances to extend it to a third set, really. And it was pretty amazing that I didn't know how to read this answer, really, that Osaka said she didn't notice how hampered Muchova was. She said she obviously noticed that she took the medical timeout at the end of the first set and came back with her hamstring strapped, but she didn't notice Muchova being physically compromised at all. And maybe she's just so in the zone, and you know, you don't want to do a Alcaraz against Djokovic in Australia and get sucked into the vortex. But to me, it was so obvious that Muchova, I mean, she wasn't putting any weight on that left leg, yeah. But she was like, not many players could play like that injured.
No, she was so compromised and yet still so dangerous because of her hand skills and her tactical awareness as well, I think, to kind of use what she had in the most effective way. And look, I think my big overarching take is the same as David's. Like, that could well have ended up in a third set tonight for Naomi Osaka. Like, her recoveries from a breakdown were what impressed me the most, because that was kind of the big concern I had coming out of Montreal, you know, where we saw what happened in the final there. Once it got away, it really got away from her. But she's at this tournament with her very obvious, as David's described, more positive, intentional body language. She's been able to stop those getting away from her. You know, I think it did a little bit against Kasatkina, but generally she's been so contained on court and not panicked. She talked about that in her press conference as well, like how pleased she is that she's not panicking in these matches. And I think up against an injured Muchova who was still dangerous, it would have been easy to panic. It would have been easy to be like, I know she said she wasn't really aware of how injured Muchova was, but it could have been easy to think, oh my God, like, how is she doing this? But she just didn't let that happen. That was very, very impressive mentality tonight, I think, from Osaka. And I quite liked her answer about about her superstition as well, because she was in her purple outfit tonight, her purple dress, whereas the red one is actually her night session dress. But she feels like she's been playing better in the purple one, so she wanted to.
I don't like the purple one.
And she said she thinks it looks better on her.
Oh, I do.
No, I don't.
Okay. I like
but it might be sort of figure skating outfit. It just looks too much like a cheap figure skating outfit to me. But I'm absolutely sure it's not cheap. But the red one looked less so. And something about the hair stuff was more dramatic with the red. But everyone loves it, and I'm thrilled for her. Yeah. So, folks, that gives us a semi-final of Naomi Osaka against Amanda Anisimova.
It's like Fulham against West Brom. That is perhaps an insult to both Anisimova and Osaka.
I would like to ask for some entirely objective takes about what's going to happen, please.
Do you know, I think it's going to be an absolute classic.
I do as well.
I think it's going to be like when Naomi Osaka faced Jennifer Brady. Remember that semi-final here?
2020.
5 years ago. And it was followed by Serena Williams against Victoria Azarenka. It was one of the nights of my tennis watching life, that was. Two matches of the highest quality and drama.
What it might also be like is the match that they played against one another in Australia in 2022 that Matt remembers, potentially watches sort of every night before he goes to bed.
It's on my list.
Well, I don't remember that match, and I'm really curious to watch it now. You know, I'm fascinated to see what these rallies look like between these two.
One of the things I remember the most is Osaka's press conference after that, and I actually looked it up today to make sure I had remembered it correctly and hadn't just imagined it.
This match was 7-6 in the third to Anisimova. It could not have been better in terms of quality and drama, everything.
Yeah, exactly.
It delivered.
Yeah, and look, Osaka, by that point, early in 2022, wasn't playing her best tennis. She was beginning to just fall off a little bit from the level that she'd had winning 4 major titles before then. And Anisimova, she was a very different player as well. She was coached by Darren Cahill in that period. It's a very, very sort of moment in time match, I think, this one. But what I remember is just how taken aback Osaka was by the Anisimova ball. And I felt like she described it in a way that really made sense for me at the time, trying to figure out why I liked the Anisimova game so much. I think Osaka put it really well. She said her shots they're not strong, but they come at you fast. It's not heavy, but it comes at me so quickly I didn't have time to set up, and it stayed really low to the ground. And I remember, that really being a great description of the Anisimova shots, because she doesn't strike the ball with venom, and yet players are rocked back by the smooth power that she has. It affects players.
It's more like Muchova's in that way. I mean, I was watching Muchova's forehand today, and through the air, when you're looking side on, it goes through the air faster than Osaka's, which has got a bit more work on it. And it's sort of arrows, and the backhand of Anisimova doesn't look, to the naked eye, to me at least, as though it's got any spin on it at all, really.
And then they met again at the French Open, the very next slam that year, and again Anisimova won. So she leads that head-to-head 2-0. And look, I just find it fascinating, because one of the things Osaka mentioned about that round table of coaches that she had after Washington was she felt like she can beat anyone from the baseline. She said that to her team, apparently. I feel like I can beat anyone from the back of the court. And that, to me, is the enticing, fascinating bit about this match, because I do find it hard to split them in terms of when they're at their best from the baseline, because they've both got that thing that you've just described earlier in the show, dangerous from both sides. Like, where do you go? If Anisimova's hitting her forehand like she was today, that's a huge problem, because you do not want to go into the backhand. You just don't. The forehand is the wing you would go to, but it was so dangerous today. But then Osaka, with this improved movement that we're seeing now, her ability to get behind the ball, as you've described, David, and unleash on those ground strokes, that's a huge problem for everyone as well. And look, I'm going to go Anisimova, of course I am, but it's on a knife edge, I think, and that's what makes it tantalising. I cannot wait. Women's semi-final night at the US Open is pretty much my favourite day of the tennis season anyway, and the fact that we get this matchup, bring it on.
I think it will be Osaka for the reason of the serve, which I just find so efficient at the moment, and the movement. I think ground stroke wise I can't separate them really. They're slightly different types of ground stroke, but I think the movement is quite a significant superiority for Osaka. And also I picked her to win the title, so she's going to win the whole thing.
Okay, we'll get a prediction for the other women's semi-final in part 3. That's it for part 1. Join us in part 2 when we talk about the men. Before that, though, we want to take a moment to throw forward to next year for anybody thinking of taking a big tennis trip in 2026, because there is no one better to organise a tennis-themed trip of a lifetime for you than Steve Fergal's International Tennis Tours, who've been a long-time partner and supporter of this show. They can provide packages to all of the world's biggest and most fun tennis events, including the Madrid Open in April. I've been there many times. It's one of my very favourite cities in the world, and the tennis event has featured some of the best matches on tour in recent years. Think Alcaraz's matches with Nadal and Djokovic in 2022, and the Swiatek-Sabalenka final in 2024. Incredible matches. So if you want to book a trip to the Madrid Open in 2026 with Steve Fergles, they offer a special 4-day package for the quarterfinals through to the finals, including 5-star accommodations, platinum lounge hospitality with platinum level seats to match, transportation to and from the venue as well. So if that sounds good and you want to check out what Steve Fergles have to offer, just head to toursfortennis.com/podcast to find out more and book your trip. And I should point out that availability for this event is pretty limited, so get in there quick if you do fancy it. Welcome back to part 2 of the Tennis Podcast, where we turn our attention to the men now. 2 very different matches on the men's side today, setting up a semi-final between Felix Auger-Aliassime and Jannik Sinner. Let's start with Felix Auger-Aliassime and his route through to this second Grand Slam semi-final, his previous one taking place here as well, back in 2021. 4 hours and 10 minutes, 4-6, 7-6, 7-5, 7-6. Sounds like a thriller, doesn't it, Matt?
It sounds like a thriller. Look, I think when we previewed this match yesterday, we said the nerves could hang over it. You know, it was a massive opportunity for both players. You know, Grand Slam quarter-final, to get to a semi-final for the first time for Alex de Minaur, for the second time for Felix Auger-Aliassime. It just felt like it could well be a match affected by nerves and may not be the best quality tennis. And look, I think that's what happened. I mean, Auger-Aliassime said as much, didn't he, in his on-court interview afterwards. There was a lot of nerves, wasn't pretty at times. But, you know, he made the point. That is what Grand Slam tennis is like. It's not supposed to be easy. It isn't easy. And in the just enough times in the biggest moments, Auger-Aliassime came up with the tennis that he needed to win this one. It was kind of the match where I think I'd have been more into it if it was best of 3. You know,
preach.
Like, I think when it went 1-all and neither of them were quite at their best,
there wasn't any sense of urgency.
2.5 hours in,
yeah,
it did kind of feel like, God, wouldn't it be great if this were the deciding set now?
And they both had that deadline, and it just didn't. I do think it's important to point this out. I don't want to lay into Auger-Aliassime and de Minaur trying their hearts out, and of course they were nervous.
It's absolutely fine.
It's absolutely fine. It's not their fault. But, you know, people will very quickly and lazily, I think, point to the French Open men's final as evidence of why best of 5 is a great thing and it can never, ever be touched. And, of course, I fucking love the French Open final. I'd be devastated if that didn't exist in my life. But for every one of those, there's quite a lot of these. And I do think it's quite important to point that out, because they don't get highlighted as much, and people don't think of them when they're just sort of default defending best of 5 in a very sort of institutionalized way, I think.
And I think the other aspect that sort of took away from my enjoyment of this match is that there's kind of 2 ways to experience like a Grand Slam tournament. There's the way that we experience it and like mega fans experience it, which is watching every match, watching every day, living it, and they're very aware of the whole narrative of the tournament. And if you're fully aware of that, you knew that the winner of this was likely to face Jannik Sinner in the semi-final, and you can appreciate it for them in that experience. But in terms of like the big narrative of the tournament, it didn't feel like hugely consequential, and yet it was taking up 5 hours of our time, and it wasn't that good, you know. But I would say that like people who just dip in to a tournament, they come here for a day and they get that match, and they're maybe more casual tennis fans. Okay, it wasn't the highest quality, but I I bet they were more into like the fact that it was on an ice edge. You know, we have been crying out for a close match in the men's, and
I wasn't crying out for this, Matt.
No, I wasn't, but I think some people would have just enjoyed the fact that it was close. We didn't really know who was going to win. They're not worried about who Auger-Aliassime and de Minaur are going on to face in the next round. They're just here for this, and as a sporting spectacle, if you take away all of that outside context, it was two guys trying their best, close moments, and I'm sure that there were people who enjoyed it for that. I wasn't one of them because, as I said, I'm experiencing the tournament a bit differently to that, and I found it tough. But, you know, I can appreciate it for de Minaur and for Auger-Aliassime, and it was in the balance, and it looked like it could go to a fifth set when de Minaur went up in the fourth, and Auger-Aliassime didn't let it.
I love that.
He brought it back.
You know, and if you know some of his backstory as well, and have known how much he's struggled really the last couple of years, this is a guy who was at this level 4 years ago, and he's 21, and it's all new and all fresh, and everybody's telling him how great he's going to be, and he's so impressive to talk to. Like when you hear him, the way it's not rip-roaring quotes. Don't get me wrong. You know, we're not leading podcasts because Felix Auger-Aliassime has just said something incredible, but it's the maturity of him. It's the way he doesn't get down on himself, or at least he says he just moves on, and process might sound boring, but process is what gets these people where they want to go. I mean, my chat with him on the eve of this tournament for Tennis Podcast Meets, he said, I can't just have some magic wand to get me back to where I was. And yet here he is. He is back where he was. And he's done it with a chat with me.
Magic wand equals David Law.
He's done it by incrementally building his way back and getting himself confident and his game in order so that he could beat Roman Safulin in the second round. That gave him some impetus to go in against Zverev, and he serves decently in the first set, loses his serve once, gets broken, then figures it out, starts to work his way back in. He's built his way into the semi-finals, and he had to do that from a set down today. He had to do it from kind of sort of tightening in the fourth set, and he won anyway. What a triumph that is.
Yeah, because I think de Minaur will probably think he should have won 3 of the sets today. You know, he won the first one, he had a set point in the second one, and he was well ahead in the fourth, but he couldn't quite close. And in a match of such tight margins, it was Auger-Aliassime who just brought it a little bit more in those biggest moments. It wasn't anywhere near as convincing as his performance over Zverev or Rublev. It was about the struggle. It was about just getting over the line, and he's displayed all the things therefore this tournament. You know, he's had his performance where he was pretty flawless against Zverev. You can't expect to play like that all the time. You know, you've got to be able to get through the matches where you don't quite have your best tennis, and he did do that today. And look, he's now, as you said, back into a Grand Slam semi-final, and from where he was just a few weeks ago, I never really would have picked Auger-Aliassime to have come through this section with Zverev in, with Rublev in, with de Minaur in, who just all felt like surer bets at the start of this tournament, and yet he's the one who's got through, and credit to him.
Just quickly on Alex de Minaur, that's 6 Grand Slam quarterfinals for him now with no semis. Will he ever break that ceiling?
To get to a semi, I think he will. Yeah, I do think he'll. I mean, he was very close today, and I think if he's running into Jannik Sinner, no, I don't think he will.
But this was a day when he didn't.
No, I know.
And haven't you got to take advantage of those days?
But he wasn't that far away, and I think he's young enough and he's reliable enough to give himself more looks at it.
And I think he's been playing better tennis in his career than he is at the moment. I know that he's had a couple of Grand Slam quarterfinals, and that's a really nice bit of consistency he's had just now, Wimbledon and the US Open, and he had the title in between, didn't he, in in Washington. On paper, it's a really good run of form. I think eye test wise, he's been more convincing. He's been better in the past, and I think if he was in that form and he had this draw, he could have done it. Now, that's a lot of ifs, that's a lot of things coming together at the right time, but yeah, I'd love to see him do it in Australia, where he does get great support there.
Somewhere where the host broadcaster is doing a Alex de Minaur road to the title graphic after the draw.
Mind you, they're doing a Christopher O'Connell road to the title.
Yeah, I mean...
no offence, Chris.
I'm so excited about the Chris O'Connell. I'm already excited about Australia and Chris O'Connell road to the title graphic.
Because we talked about the slight chippiness in his press conference the other day, where he was saying he felt like he'd been a little bit disrespected by the tournament in terms of his court assignments here. Like, today's performance was not a great rebuke to that, in terms of how he did play on that big stage. But as was pointed out to him in the press conference, he is a big deal in Australia. Like, they do give him big assignments, as they should. Like, he's their best player, and it's great when Alex de Minaur gets like a big Rod Laver Arena moment. And he's been unfortunate that, as David said, he's had Jannik Sinner in his path, and he had Novak Djokovic, didn't he, when Djokovic was just out to get him. I feel like this kind of draw in Australia, he can break that ceiling. So I would love to see it. I really like his game. I really like him. And I think he will play. I think he'll play better tennis than he's playing right now in the future.
So it is Felix Auger-Aliassime that gets to be thrown into the Jannik Sinner enclosure. Sinner, after beating countryman Lorenzo Musetti 6-1, 6-4, 6-2 in a match that I think basically looked exactly as we thought it would look.
Yeah, even up to the way Musetti entered the court. Like, he won the fit check with his
great jacket.
With his great
Bottega Veneta jacket. Well done, Lorenzo.
His all black fit.
He couldn't have been more Federer from whenever it was, 2007 or something.
But with a little bit of Italian
Has any man ever looked better entering
the
tennis court?
And he goes into his pre-match interview in the tunnel, and he says, I'm
going to shock the world. He said, I'm hoping to surprise
everyone.
I missed that.
and then he's 5-love down, or whatever it was. And
he won 9 points in the first set.
Yeah, and Sinner was sublime.
Sinner was amazing.
Sublime.
Unreal.
He is lethal, isn't he, on that court, on these hard courts?
We've talked about Anisimova and Osaka with devastating power off both wings. I mean, on the men's tour, look no further than Jannik Sinner for that. Like, his ball speed off both wings. Where do you go? And he's an astonishing mover, and his serve is brilliant, and he holds up in all the big moments.
And he hits to hurt. He's all over you.
Yeah. And look, if Musetti was going to have any chance, he was going to have to play like the perfect match and take even his half chances. And there's a point that stood out to me was in the second set. Musetti he'd had a break point, he hadn't taken it, he'd fended off a break point. He was in it. He was at least in the set. He was 4-3 up. Sinner was serving. It was 15-all, and Musetti did a brilliant return into play, and he had a short forehand, and he netted it. I just thought that there and then is the problem. Like, against, it's not even really a chance. 15-all on your opponent's serve, and yet against Sinner, that's pretty much a massive chance, because you're in the point and he just couldn't quite execute. He ended up having 7 break points and not taking any of them in the match, but most of them were just brilliantly saved by Sinner, who just, as you said, came out with an intent to just dominate. And Musetti, we've talked about his path through here. I still don't think he's a top 20 hardcourt player in the world. I know he's in the last 8 of a hardcourt major, But I think what we've seen coming into this tournament, what we've seen really in the last few years, like, he's got a lot of work still to do on the hard courts, and he can get rushed, and Sinner just ripped this from him, and it's a really nice run for Musetti. It's very, very valuable points.
Helps him with Turin,
he's
doesn't it?
absolutely in the mix for Turin, and that would be great if he could get there. But Sinner is levels above him on a hard court, I think, and demonstrated that.
So Sinner against Auger-Aliassime will be the second men's semi-final on Friday. The first will be Alcaraz against Djokovic. I'm sure they'd love to switch those around because Alcaraz-Djokovic feels like the headline match, but we think that they kind of can't, that it's an unwritten rule that the players that get the extra day off have to play the first semi-final, which does make sense.
I mean, there's been, I haven't checked it, but I think there's been some suggestion that they did switch it for the All-American clash last year with Tiafoe and Fritz. I can't honestly remember. I'll have to go back and look at that.
Well, that match was certainly second.
It was definitely second. It was just a question of whether, what half of the draw had played first.
We're going by the fact that ESPN confidently declared that it would be that order. So
for Djokovic, Alcaraz,
that's what we'll assume. We had women's doubles semi-finals today. It was the top four seeds in the women's doubles semi-finals. Siniakova and Townsend, the top seeds, beating Kudermetova and Mertens 6-3, 7-6, and then Dabrowski and Routliffe beating Irani and Paolini. So the women's doubles final will be Katerina Siniakova, Taylor Townsend against Gabby Dabrowski and Erin Routliffe. I think that'll be a cool match and a great crowd in for that, which will be very cool to see. That is it for part 2. Join us in part 3 when we look ahead to tomorrow, one of the best shows in tennis, US Open women's semi-final night. Welcome back to part 3 of the tennis podcast. Let's have a little look at tomorrow now. I think you know what's coming. It starts on the Arthur Ashe Stadium at 7 p.m. I love that they do the women's semi-finals as a night session here. It's just the most incredible ticket. If you got a ticket for tomorrow night, then lucky you. You're going to have a great time. It starts with Aryna Sabalenka against Jessica Pegula. Predictions, please.
I'm going Sabalenka. Look, I think there's a potential question over whether having that walkover was good for Sabalenka. That's something that always gets thrown into the conversation when something like that happens. I don't know if there's a definitive answer. Maybe it affects different players in different ways. But look, I think Aryna Sabalenka's a better player than Pegula, and I think, particularly on a hard court, she's just convincing Sabalenka. I have some doubts about her in the latter stages of these major tournaments, considering her conversion rate isn't that good, considering how often she gets here. But I'm not convinced that Pegula makes her uncomfortable enough. I think we've seen Anisimova and Keys this year kind of hit her off the court to varying degrees at the Australian Open and at Wimbledon, and we've seen Coco Gauff frazzle her mind with defence and the whole conditions in that match. Pegula, she played great in last year's final. Pegula, I'm not sure she can play all that much better. I know that she thinks she could serve better. I think she had a not great serving day in that final, Pegula, so that's definitely an aspect she could improve. But she played really well, Pegula, but Sabalenka just stepped up at the end of each set and managed to win them, and I just feel like maybe something like that will happen again. Pegula's been starting matches brilliantly. I think there's a chance she comes out really hot here and rattles Sabalenka, and that might be her best route to victory. Start well, get the crowd up, get Sabalenka a little bit rattled. That's a scenario I could imagine, but I'm going Sabalenka with her bigger game, the options at her disposal, the tie-break record to fall back on if she needs it. Yeah, I'm going Sabalenka in this one, but I'm looking forward to it. I really am.
Yeah, I hesitated a little because I was suddenly thinking of how efficient Jessica Pegula's game has looked and that inactivity for a few days that Sabalenka's had. But I basically agree with every word you've said. I know that's not exactly a great addition to the conversation, but I think that's great analysis. She is just a better player, and I would expect that she will bring out the goods on an occasion like this. I think it could be very similar to their final, which was 7-5, 7-5. I think there could be some rocky moments. The crowd could be in it, but I think Sabalenka will find a way.
Yeah, I'm going Sabalenka for reasons that were confirmed for me by Matt Stat today, which if you'd like to see, you can subscribe to the newsletter.
There was a worrying moment around, I don't know what time it was quite late in the day, and I thought, oh shit, I haven't done my stat.
That's why I'm giving it the big promo. I know the journey you went on today.
But I think I pulled it out of the bag.
He pulled it out of the bag big time, folks. It is worth subscribing to the newsletter for. We'll put the link in our show notes, as always. Second match of the day. You've given your predictions. I know neither of you are budging. I'd like to know sets, please.
Hold on a minute. I want to know what you think.
Ooh, I'm going to go Anisimova. Head-to-head's 2-0. And I'm all in. Look, I will be thrilled for Osaka. I love that. There is no bad scenario here. That will be awesome. But that I'm overcome by what Anisimova did today. I find it really moving. Really moving.
Well, I agree with you that it is, and I share the view that look, because I said Osaka would win the tournament, I wanted to win the tournament, right? And I also do think she's great. I think she's really it's lovely to see her back. But I also love Anisimova. I love watching her play. I love the fact that Matt Roberts could be dyeing his hair blonde on Saturday in honour of what he said he would do at Wimbledon, which so nearly happened. And
I also do think, and I have not watched every ball of every match this tournament. You watched Osaka tonight more closely than I did. This is not a scientific assessment, but from what I've seen, Anisimova's tennis today was the best. Like, she took my breath away. And I want Matt to go blonde. But I'll also be thrilled for you, David. It's great. Everything's great.
It's no lose.
It is great.
Except I'd lose.
There's the aspect of both players. Obviously, it's the same for both players, but having to come back the next day, it's going to throw them out of their rhythm. You know, like, I know that happens in Grand Slam tournaments for the women. They, one half of the draw always has to do this in terms of playing back-to-back days.
It's noticeable that Osaka came straight to her press conference
that's what I
within
thought.
Minutes of the match ending.
That's what I thought. That's normally something that you might do if you've lost. Very rarely happens if you've won, that you're in straight away. I think she was conscious of that.
Get out of here, go and rest up.
Yeah, and I think, look, it's maybe not a big factor, but
it's not nothing.
It's not nothing.
If Anisimova hadn't been to a Grand Slam final before, obviously very recently, I would give more weight to that factor. And it is interesting, isn't it? Osaka is historically the player with much more experience on this occasion, on this stage, but it's experience that was years ago. She hasn't been in a Grand Slam semi-final for four and a half, almost 5 years. It's like Anisimova at Wimbledon. She'd been in one, but it was 2019. That was a whole pandemic ago.
Right.
Different lifetime.
Whereas Anisimova's last Grand Slam semi-final was a few weeks ago, and she played great in it. I am expecting both players to show up. I'm expecting a classic. I think it's going to be unbelievable.
Armstrong tomorrow is men's doubles semi-finals as well as junior quarterfinals. The men's doubles semi-finals are Yuki Bambury and Michael Venus against the British pairing of Joe Salisbury and Neil Skubsky. And then we have Robert Cash and JJ Tracy, the All-American pairing. My biggest laugh of the day came from clicking on Robert Cash within the US Open app and seeing his profile picture. I won't spoil it for you, but just if you've got a free few minutes to spare, I recommend you do the same. So Cash and Tracy take on the Fifth Seeds, Marcel Granollers and Horatio Zeballos. That is tomorrow on Armstrong. Have you just done it?
I've just done it. That is sensational. That is a child.
Yeah. Just if you need a laugh, or if you do, whatever, Robert Cash, look it up. Click on him in the schedule. Folks, we have our lovely mascots. Hello to Phoebe, hello to Maisie, and hello to Roger. Hello to Greg, Chris and Jeff, our executive producers and all-around top folks. We are part of the Athletic Podcast Network. We're going to leave shout-outs for tonight because, frankly, they're hoovering up around us right now, and I was going to say we have a bus to catch, but I'm worried we might not even have a bus to catch. But let's go and find out, shall we? Thanks for listening. We hope to be back tomorrow.